The Georgia Bulldogs with its fourth assistant coaching change since becoming national champions. We're talking about here on our UGA Sports YouTube page. I'm Dane Young from UGASports.com, a reporter for the site, publisher of the site, and my boss, Rodney Nabulsi, over here broke the news over earlier with a What Are We Hearing post. You'd know about it if you were on the dog vent, so get over there, become a member, check out what we have, because obviously the news does not stop for the Georgia Bulldogs. Roddy, half the staff pretty much turning over, at least for on-field coaches.
Yeah, but not exactly a surprise. We'd heard rumors that Matt Luke would be out this year. The fact that he's retiring is kind of new, which is a good thing. The fact that he's 46 and can retire and spend time with his kids. I mean, I spoke to another coach in the industry, and he's like, who's my age, because I just turned 50 this week, and he's like, just green with envy, just absolutely green with envy that Matt Luke can do this. You know, you have the potential. We always talk about, well, if I had $1 million, I'd retire too. Well, this is a guy who was a former head coach at Ole Miss. He's making $900,000 at Georgia. He's got some money socked away, and I think he's just going to take some time off and be with his kids. He's got young children, so he can do it. He's going to step aside and stay in the area, from what I understand. Don't know if he wants to help Kirby out as an analyst or whatever, but he's basically going to let somebody else come in and do the job. And okay, we got word of it. We'd heard about it, that there was a possibility, but we never had anything concrete till this morning. Anthony Dasher calls me and goes, I got something big. I'm waking up, sleeping late. And I'm like, what is it? He's like, Matt Luke's going to leave or something like that. I'm like, okay. So I've been awake. We've been working the story all day. We had it first thing this morning, but when we reached out to the UGA for an official confirmation, they asked us, I said, look, his players don't know yet. Can you wait until the players find out? And I went back to Anthony Dasher and said, hey, can you hold off? And Dash, with his graciousness, said, yeah, we can do that. Now, we don't always do it. We can't always. Sometimes the news is going to get out. But we held back on the news until we found out that the players had been informed this afternoon when classes were over. So we ran with the story. So Matt Luke is going to step aside. They'll have a new Eddie Gordon, his assistant, is still with the program. UGA has been working on this, so they will have a offensive coach, I think, pretty quickly. I'm not saying immediately, but again, we got word of it today that it was definitely going to happen after rumors. UGA's known about this for at least a week, if not more. So they knew it was coming. Kirby knows that practice starts March 16th. Spring practice does. He's got to get a guy in here. And when Kirby starts hitting that mental Rolodex and starts calling people, they pick up the phone. And I'm not saying – I don't know where he is in the interview process, but it would not stun me if they had a name to put out there pretty quickly. This, again, give Kirby a week, tell him he needs a new coach, and he'll have somebody pretty damn fast.
Well, and this is not a huge surprise in some ways, just at least from some of the rumblings that we had heard throughout the season. And what I mean by that is that if you took all the position groups at Georgia, look, there's more than 120 people just on the roster. Then you start adding in the assistants and then the people that are support staff. All of a sudden, you have like a very small Georgia city here of humans. They're all not going to see eye to eye at any point, even in a national championship year. So it's never as kumbaya as it seems, and then and sometimes it's never as destructive as it seems either when it goes the other way. If you took all the position groups and you said which one probably had the most unrest this particular season, the ones where some guys are complaining about different things, I think offensive line would have been right there at the top of the list. And I don't know that there's any particular fault other than the guy that preceded Matt Luke was one of the most beloved coaches in Georgia history. And Sam Pittman is impossible to replace. It's what do they say? You want to be the guy?
No, I don't want to be.
You don't want to be the guy after the guy. You want to be the guy after that.
Yeah, I do not want to be the guy that replaces Sam Pittman because those players loved him. But I do want to be the guy that replaces him because all of a sudden I've got 4- and 5-star offensive linemen all over the place. That's a huge get. Recruiting, and I won't say recruiting is taking a step back because they did sign 5 offensive linemen in this group, but it gets exponentially harder when you have 4- and 5-stars sitting on the bench to go out and say, hey, come be the 6th and 7th 5-star guy we have sitting on the bench. he came into a tough situation where the players love Sam Pittman, so they're going to have some loyalty going back that way. You also have a situation where it's going to be a little tough you just can't keep up that level of recruiting. The only issue that I had with Matt Luke was with all those 4 and 5-star guys, you had some pass protection issues. And a lot of people like to point to the stats and go, hey, Georgia's quarterbacks were hardly ever sacked. But that's because you can coach around that. You don't do a lot of show passes, as Coach Donna calls them, where you take that 7-step drop and everybody knows that it's going to be a pass. And everybody, the defensive lineman can just pin their ears back and go flying up the field to get to your quarterback. You have rollouts, you have bootlegs, you have naked boots. You move the guy around so that they can't quite just go right after your quarterback. And when you have a mobile quarterback, as in Stetson Bennett, you do that. And plus, if your quarterback throws the ball away or your quarterback doesn't take a sack, well, then you don't give up as many sacks. So I don't like to use just the stats as an issue, but talking to people inside the program, they're like, look, our pass protection could be better. And again, I don't know if that's a Matt Luke issue. I don't know if it's the guys themselves, but the offensive line stuff can get better. The recruiting, it didn't really take a step down, but you didn't get as many 4 and 5 stars. It's tough to recruit, but right now Georgia's got 21 offensive linemen on this roster. It's insane. So you're going to see some attrition on the offensive line. You're going to see a lot of movement. So to get to your point of which position group on a national championship team had a little more unrest or guys who weren't getting on the field and were getting a little frustrated with it, it would be the offensive line, just because you have so many guys and they're so talented, and you had a absolute cupboard full of top players who want to be on the field, and there wasn't a lot of rotation. The defensive line rotated all over the place. Your running backs rotated all over the place. Your wide receivers rotated all over the place. Cornerbacks, you didn't have – you couldn't rotate anybody. But the offensive line did not rotate a lot, and you could have some guys who were expecting to play who didn't. So there has been some grumblings there, but the good thing about having a new coach come in is that everybody who thinks that things are set a certain way now all of a sudden feels that, well, a new coach is coming in. I've got a chance to impress the new guy.
Well, and let me be clear, those rumblings happen from some places around the offensive line, but when guys had an opportunity to leave, they didn't. I mean, Jamari Salyer stayed instead of going pro. Warren McClendon could be in the draft right now, decided to come back with the assumption Matt Luke was going to be his coach. So I don't want to make it sound like players were like trying to get away from these guys. Not that at all. What I'm saying is that guys wanted to play more than they were playing, and Georgia was kind of rolling the way that it was.
I'm just – when you have a national championship team, when you win, winning cures everything. Everybody's happy. But individually, you have some players who are like, man, I want to be out there. And if you're not playing, sometimes you're going to blame your position coach. So –
now, the inverse of that is also true, that for the most part, Georgia's at a status in college football where if it wants an assistant coach, it gets an assistant coach. Yeah. And so when you see a Jamil Adai go to Miami, okay. I'm not saying he was invited to leave, but I'm kind of saying if he went up to him and they said, maybe that's fine, go ahead. We're not worried about it. And, if some offensive linemen felt slighted by Matt Luke, maybe it's because he wanted some more family time. He didn't have the right balance that he wanted. It all could be interrelated that way.
Yeah. My rule of thumb is this. If you see a coach making a lateral move, going to another program to be the same caliber of coach, you have a tight ends coach going to be a tight ends coach. You have a secondary coach going to be a secondary coach. If a guy is not taking a promotion when he goes somewhere else, then it's usually mutually decided that coach needs to move on. Coach either isn't happy or his head coach isn't happy with him. So if you're the Auburn secondary coach and you go be the Tennessee secondary coach, it's very likely that you did not work out with the Auburn coach or vice versa. So it's a situation where you don't have to fire somebody. You just tell them, hey, I'm not going to renew your contract next year. Because a lot of these guys are on a one-year deal. And the guy goes, okay. He says, find a job, I'll write you a nice recommendation, and you go off and do your thing. So you'll see, guys take a lateral job. And the school that he's going to always, hey, we hired him away from school X.
Yep.
No, that's not how that works all the time. And sometimes it's good. You get new blood in there, and it prevents you from having a personality disorder metastasizes into something worse. It doesn't come to yelling and stuff like that. It's like, look, you don't fit in the culture here, or vice versa. You go somewhere else. So to me, it's a great situation where you can tell a guy, hey, we're not going to fire you, but you go get a job somewhere else. And you see that. Now, here's the thing with Luke. Luke's just retired. So it's not a situation where they're like, hey, you need to get the hell out of here. He's like, look, I got a ton of money. I'd like to see my kids grow up. I mean, he was just at the baseball game with Kirby Smart on Friday.
Yeah.
They were at a concert together earlier in the week or earlier in the month. It's not like there's a ton of bad blood there or something like that. It's just that's a situation where a guy is just retiring. But to your point, can they go out and get another O-line coach? If you are a big name O-line coach, you got to be looking at, a quality O-line coach. You got to be looking at Georgia, even if it's a lateral move, is possibly a move up. You're going to get better players.
In some cases, there's lateral moves. I mean, unless it's from Alabama or Ohio State or one of the other ones that's always in the playoff, that's not lateral anymore. That's what Georgia's done with its program.
Exactly.
Let's
recap guy up, even though it's the same position. But if you see a guy leaving from Alabama to go if he's the Alabama safeties coach and he goes to Tulane to be the safeties coach, that's probably because Nick Saban told him to hit the road.
Let's recap kind of what's happened with Georgia's assistants. Before the national championship game, we knew that Dan Lanning was taking the head coaching job at Oregon. Cortez Hankton left Georgia for LSU. Lateral move, like you said. That one may be a bit different because Cortez going back home. Big deal for him there.
Yeah.
Jamal Adai going to Miami. Lateral move. Program's got some momentum. Fine. Matt Luke, at the moment, seems like he's not going to be coaching anywhere next year. According to his choice. Guys coming in, Brian McClendon returns to UGA as the wide receivers coach, replacing Cortez Hankton. Chidera Uzodiribe comes in as the outside linebackers coach. And a piece of this in the asterisk at the bottom, Will Muschamp moves to co-defensive coordinator. And so Uzodiribe takes some of the responsibilities that were shared by Lanning and Schumann. And then Fran Brown, defensive backs coach, was brought on last week. So that's kind of the standing that we're at now. The obvious next question, and you were beginning to touch on it, Roddy, what does Georgia do with the offensive line?
Again, they've known this was coming. So I'm sure there's a short list. Kirby starts reaching out to people. Hey, I've got an opening coming up. Are you interested? Remember when we talked back when I was the coach here or when we were at this coaching conference and you reached out to me? What are you doing now? What's your situation like? What would you need to come here? Stuff like that. We've been running down some names of guys that we think are in it. There's a few names we can cross off. I know a lot of people say, well, he'll just go get Will Friend. I don't see that happening. He'll get Rob Sale. I don't see that happening. Kirby does have some guys he's close to, but that doesn't mean just because he gave Muschamp, Bobo, McClendon a job doesn't mean he'll go immediately hire the next guy back, or the next guy that he's friends with. So this is a huge, huge hire. And I don't want to say that the secondaries coach is not a big hire or the wide receivers coach is not a big hire. They are. But just remember, what is Kirby Smart's number one issue? It's the interior of the line, or his line play. That's the first thing he talked about when he was hired at UGA is we got to get better on the offensive line. Number one priority. He knows that everything starts up front. He knows that you got to get bigger on the defensive front. He changed that around. So those guys, this hire is important because you have to have great recruiting and great development of those guys when they come in. Think what happened in the first game of the season. You had Tate Ratledge, a 5-star right guard. A few plays in, he's done for the season. You've got to have somebody who's developed who can step in over there. You lost your starting center. Warren Erickson was going to be your center. Then he got hurt in camp, and they had to bring in a redshirt freshman, Cedric Van Brand, to take over. You've got to have guys developed who can step in and do that sort of thing. So this is a very, very important hire. And we've looked at a few names. One name that popped up to me was the offensive line coach at Ohio State who's looking for a job now, Greg Studrawa. I can't say it a ton of times, but Studrawa, Studrawa. That's a guy who had when he just left Ohio State, I think he was let go. A lot of the Ohio State fans were like, good riddance. But the 4 or 5 years prior to him being this coming season, he had one of the best offensive lines out there. So I don't know what happened this past year, but that's a guy that I'm like, hey, Georgia starts practice in 3 weeks. What are you doing, Greg? So I would check in on him. Again, I'm not telling Kirby who to hire. I'm just saying that was a name that popped up right off the bat.
And you see SEC experience there with LSU all over his resume for, what was that, 6 years?
Yeah. So he probably knows Todd Monken from there. And Todd Monken is going to have a list of guys that he likes, from the NFL. Would not shock me to see them go with somebody that he worked with Tampa Bay or with who else?
Cleveland Browns.
Cleveland Browns, So he's got a long list. Dell McGee's got a list of guys that he's worked with. Hartley's been all over the place. Todd would be like, hey, coach, I know this guy would be a great offensive line coach. Like, you get together as a staff and say, hey, who do we want? And everybody mentions their guy. But
well, there's another guy I'm going to mention that I think has at least some input with his network for every Georgia hire from here on out, as far as I'm concerned, and that's Will Muschamp. And you were talking about what coaches look for. When Muschamp got hired to be South Carolina's head coach, he had one of the most, I think, honest and candid speeches or statements about how you build a staff. And most coaches just say, we'll do that in time. We're not going to rush it, all the different tropes. Muschamp said, look, here's the thing about coaching for me. And he knew that he was the defensive guy. Fine. He can get his guys in there. He said, I need to get a quarterback's coach / offensive coordinator, because that's like such a crucial position to develop that quarterback and make sure we have that right. I need to get an offensive line coach that can teach technique, because it's so much more refined and specific than most fans would ever imagine it would be. It is an art to do what those big guys are doing in the middle and not step on each other's foot and make sure that you know what everyone's doing around you. And he said after that, those two positions are most crucial in terms of teaching. After that, I need recruiters. Because the rest of it, we can figure it out as we go. But those two things are so critical and crucial. If we get that wrong at the start, we're going to be behind the 8 ball from there. And that's how important an offensive line coach is.
Yeah, and I actually reached out to some of our friends at Ohio State to ask them about that Greg Studerawa guy. They said, yeah, he can develop him, but he's not that great a recruiter. I'm like, well, he can come to a staff full of recruiters. I'm not worried about Kirby Smart when it comes to recruiting. He's got a whole group of them. But, you got to have that development. And, of course, you do want a top recruiter. So, again, Kirby's going to look for a fantastic recruiter and a fantastic developer. That's his, again, very, very important. But you can get one or the other, then maybe that's what you do. Or maybe holds off until the perfect guy comes up. But, there's not – a lot of those positions have been filled.
Another critical piece of this that you mentioned, and I don't know that he'll be a candidate for the job, but I was talking with someone around the program earlier today. Eddie Gordon, having been a GA and then now staying with the team in quality control. Eddie Gordon and what he's done with the offensive line, kind of on the day-to-day, checking in with guys, he's beloved by guys there. And he did a lot of good work with Matt Luke. And so I think having that stability is probably going to help out going into the spring. Eddie Gordon seems like one of those coaches on the rise. I mean, the guy just played college football, 5-6 years ago. But he's a superstar in the back end for Georgia. And so if you don't know who he is, go check out his resume. He's not forward facing a lot, but when I've talked to people around the program and some players, they say, yeah, Eddie Gordon's the real deal.
On the recruiting trail, that's all we ever hear. That's not a shot against Matt Luke. Guys will mention Matt Luke quite often. And, the Arch Manning kid, the Mannings love Matt Luke. And one of the first responses we saw when we broke the news in the dog wheel was, does this hurt us with Arch Manning? Maybe it hurts with Arch Manning, but he's not going to make a decision off of the O-line coach, But point being, when we talk to recruits, they will rave about Eddie Gordon. They just, I love Coach Eddie. When I was on my visit, Coach Eddie did this. When I was on my visit, I text him every day. I call Coach Gordon all the time. So keeping him in the fold as long as possible is big. That guy's got a great future ahead of him, be it at Georgia or somewhere else. I don't know where he's going. I don't want to say it would be a seamless thing to promote him, but Kirby has shown a tendency to promote from within. If you're doing a great job and you're a strong recruiter and can develop, I can see him moving right up. But this is a giant thing, so it wouldn't shock me to see him go for somebody who's been in the NFL for a long time, or been at Ohio State, or been at a powerhouse, who can coach offensive linemen and has a long track record. In other words, this has to be a home run, proven home run, a guy that you know is going to get up there and knock it out of the park. And again, Kirby has rolled the dice on guys that we've never heard. Who the hell had heard of Dan Lanning? But Dan was coming in to run Kirby's defense. Worst case scenario, Kirby takes over. Offensive line. This has to be a Matt Luke type hire. Matt Luke was a great offensive line coach, and then he was a head coach at Ole Miss. And you were able to get him to come in and be your position coach. Hell yeah, you make that hire. You make it every day of the week. So it needs to be of that caliber, in my opinion.
Paul has joined us, and Paul, I'm not used to seeing you this early on a broadcast. Usually it's after a game, and some people have been drinking. I don't know if you're one of those in that moment. I know I am. But, before 5 o'clock on a Monday, good to see you, man.
Ooh, margaritas.
Yeah, no, I'm home. I'm home early. Had to go do some stuff for my company and then jumped on with you guys. But
what company is that?
It's a Mainstay there it is. Mainstay Construction, mainstayconstruction.net. It's my construction company here in Northeast Georgia. Quick plug, we service roofs, interiors, exteriors, gutters, siding, anything you guys may need. Mainstayconstruction.net is the place to go for that. And when I come out, we can discuss this even further in depth than I cannot say on YouTube. No, I'm kidding.
I got a scoop for you if you hire my company.
Right. No, but overall, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what you guys have touched on. I just got home and tried to jump on with you guys so you guys weren't lonely. But I don't think this affects Georgia as much as like any other position moving forward that Georgia's had to refill on. I didn't see the connection between the players and Matt Luke that well. The offensive line to me almost seemed like it could run itself last season. Yeah, you had the issue with Tate Ratledge. You had to put Warren Erickson in there, but then after that, it just ran. There was nothing else you really had to change or anything like that. So it'll be curious to see who they bring in because we've seen Kirby go now with, and I've said this before, he's gone with recruiter. It feels like BMAC is kind of a recruiter coach. The other two guys for me are really more of a recruiter. But I feel like on this type of staff, with Kirby being so relentless on the recruiting trail, that he needs a coach on the offensive line. You don't necessarily need a recruiter. You've got guys like Eddie Gordon on the backside of things that can help out with that. You've got Del McGee who can help you with recruiting offensive line players. You need a coach for the offensive line. You just happened to luck up before Matt Luke, and you had Sam Pittman, who was both. He was great at both, and we see what he's doing at Arkansas now. I think Kirby, the smart hire here is to go for a coach. You've got enough recruiters on the staff, focus in on a coach, and then maybe teach him how to recruit. That's my philosophy on it.
Give me a grumpy old O-line coach who wears the old short, the coaching shorts, that are pulled up over your belly button, who's got the whistle that barely hangs past his chin. He's just mean as hell.
Like the guy from Hard Knocks with the Browns.
The one that when he would blow the whistle, his belly would.
He just and his belly would jump. Yeah, go get him. You don't need to go get a recruiter. You don't need to go get some 32-year-old guy for the offensive line. Go find you a dominant coach and recruiting. Kirby, you can take care of O-line recruiting.
Yeah, go. Hey, Coach Martin, where are you at? Come yell at these kids like you used to yell at me. Absolutely.
Yeah, there you go.
Just with a crappy little mustache, and just but a guy who can develop you. Because again, Georgia this year, you're not going to have the same defense. This is your offense is going to have to score 45 points a game. I mean, defense will be low, but it's still not the same guy. I mean, how many of these kids are going to go in the first or second round? You're going to lose.
This is the template. This is what we're doing. We're going to start the campaign. Whoever, I mean, it should be Bob Wiley, frankly, but whoever Georgia hires he needs to look just like this.
Yeah. Hey, pull up that Greg Studrara guy. Find him for a second. That's a guy kind of has that look, Bring in a guy like that who can take this offensive line, and you're losing two very productive running backs. You got a good quarterback back there, but your quarterbacks beyond Stetson are very inexperienced. You have a great set of tight ends, that But this is a team that should be able to just mash people. Should be with all that offensive line talent. Again, 21 offensive linemen on scholarship. When all 5 of those new freshmen get there, should just be able to go and blow everybody up off the ball. Think about it. You could have Amarius Mims, Tate Ratledge, Broderick Jones. That's 3 5-stars on the O-line.
Hey, Roddy Gregg Struarwa, however you say, kind of resembles you a little bit. Maybe give him some glasses.
Well, to see that, hey, that's another point in his favor. He's obviously a brilliant man.
I'm
damn good looking.
I'm on the Bob Wiley train, frankly. I'm pretty sold.
Yeah,
but that's my point though. Is to bring in an older, established guy that can be a coach.
A Matt Luke.
Yeah, and then worry about recruiting.
Sam Pittman.
Worry about recruiting afterwards.
Yeah.
I think that's the big key. You got other recruiters on this staff. O-line is the one position you need to have a coach. And not saying Matt Luke wasn't. This is no knock on Matt Luke at all. I just think that you bring in a coach first, recruiter second at that position. You've got enough recruiters on staff.
Go throw $8 million at Sam Pittman and just see what happens.
God.
Hey, we got Ben Bachman joining us. Ben, Sam, you got me talking about him. They were paying Matt Luke $900,000.
Yeah,
which is more than you're paying either of your offense or your defensive coordinators. They're both making $800,000. So they're obviously willing to spend big to get a offensive line coach.
Yeah, even though I don't know if Muschamp needs the money. He can just live the rest of his life on buyouts. But I think when it comes to offensive line, I just noticed when you look at the new offensive coaching staff now, McClendon's on there, they have an alpha recruiter at every position. Monken, you can even make the case he comes in and Vandergriff and Stockton his first 2 classes. I mean, you hit it out of the park at his.
But did he recruit those guys?
Well,
they don't come here with.
I'm asking you. You're the recruiting guy. I don't know.
Well, I think a lot of them came just because of Georgia itself. They're in state, and I mean that's obviously a big part. But you have to look and say like Brian McClendon, Del McGee, Todd Hartley, who I think in terms of recruiting his position has been the best on staff. Now I might get pushback on that, but he hits every single year. So when you look at it, that's the one position now is offensive line. They had kind of a down class last year, but that is one that you talked about, Roddy, was last year there were times when they were underdeveloped. That I even think the Vanderbilt game, and I know it's odd to bring it up, but I remember the second quarter, they couldn't get short yardage runs in that game. And that was frustrating.
Remember that.
So, and then there were other games like Tennessee where they were missing protections early in the game. And then it did get a little bit better, but you need a coach first. And then you do need a recruiter, but it's going to be vital because I look and say all across the staff, they have recruiters everywhere. I would say the biggest question mark is Deribe because I just don't know much about him. But I think all across the board, they have elite recruiters. And really from Pittman to Luke, they always have recruited O-line well. So I don't think that's going to be a problem, especially when you have an in-state talent base at offensive line. Bo Hurley, Madden Sanker this year. No other state has multiple top 100 players on O-line in their state. Georgia does every year. Why do you think Broderick Jones came to Ratledge? These kids are from Georgia. Marius Mims, Micah Morris, they're from Georgia. That's something that helps. So I look and say it's going to be hard to get a guy with a resume of former SEC head coach guys like Laramie Tunsil. It's going to be hard to get that resume. I don't think there will be. But this is a crucial hire because I think next year's O-line has a chance to be better because look at Broderick Jones in the national championship game. He was lights out. I think Brent said he was the highest graded player according to Pro Football Focus. And then you have guys, Tate Ratledge. I remember, Roddy, you were talking about this in the spring. He was balling out in the spring and fall, and he got hurt game 1. So they have a bunch of talented O-linemen. It could be better next year with better coaching.
Exactly. Coach John made that exact point. He said with Georgia's offensive line next year should be better, which is crazy when you think about losing Jamari Sawyer and Justin Schaefer off the left side. But he said with and talented backs behind him, good quarterback knows what he's doing, offense that will be catered more towards the quarterback you have instead of the quarterback you started with. Great receivers, ridiculous tight ends. You can think about this. You could have a tight end set with Brock Bowers, Darnell Washington, and Oscar Delp out there, and then Arik Gilbert on the other side as a wide receiver who could come in and all of a sudden you're like, wait, is he coming in as an H? What's Arik Gilbert doing? I mean, could be a filthy offense next year, but I agree with both your points that it could be a situation where your offensive line could be better next year, although a touch inexperienced.
One thing I saw Roddy, you were touching base on salary in terms of salary, how much they were paying Matt Luke. Only one guy on the offensive line as the offensive line coach is getting paid more or was getting paid more than Matt Luke, and that is Kyle Flood at Texas, who happens to also be their offensive coordinator. So Matt Luke was the second highest paid offensive line coach last year. So pretty much any offensive line coach that wants to, I guess, move laterally, if you would, I think this would be a step up for just about any offensive line coach out there. But if you want to say laterally, you can. They're going to make more money if Georgia keeps it at that same pay rate. I doubt they will, since they're not getting a former SEC head coach to come take the position. But what I'm saying is
they'll take the phone call.
Money. Yeah, there is money there. And Matt Luke was the second highest paid O-line coach last year, and the first one was offensive coordinator for Texas too. So
that makes a lot of sense, and that's I was thinking they've shown that they're not scared to spend money there. And again, you pay based on experience. You pay based on what it takes to get the guy. If you can get somebody to come in for $600,000, you pay them that. You just automatically pay them the what you're paying before. So I get that. Hey, you two take over just a second. I have somebody call me that I need to take this call real quick. I'm gonna drop out and I'll be right back.
Oh man, leaving me.
There he is. Back with the greatest intern of all time.
Hey man, I was cleaning up my desk the other day. I was going to send that list to you about your recruiting stuff that you did so well on, but I threw it away instead.
I would, but this man right here is ducking me on starting up the show again. I think I messaged you once. I just got no reply from Paul.
I know. My group me is all messed up, man. To be honest with you, I haven't got a group me from you since January 11th. So, but anyways, Matt Luke leaving the program. If you're just joining us, leaving the UGA program, Georgia is now will be hiring its fourth position coach / coordinator, whatever, this offseason. And Ben, we've kind of talked about Matt Luke, helped Georgia win a natty, obviously, at that position there at offensive line coach. But same time, didn't seem like some of the players and him got along too well from, everything we've learned. But those were a lot of guys recruited by Sam Pittman, and Sam Pittman and Matt Luke are just different guys. So, it's totally different. It's good. I don't know if you're getting recruited by Sam Pittman, and then if anybody comes in, I don't care who it is, if you're going to like them as much as you do like Sam Pittman. Sam Pittman's just a likable guy. But, wish Matt Luke the best of luck. I doubt you see him coaching again this year, Ben, from everything we've heard.
I don't see it. Plus, especially with those, even if he had interest in coaching, it's late in the cycle. I don't know what O-line – I don't know if there's any staffs that are filling in new positions. I thought Michigan was going to be open, but obviously that's not open. So I think that most teams have their O-line coach in play.
I guess maybe you could jump to the NFL maybe. Is the only other thing I can think of.
Yeah, that's really the only other thing. I don't know how that hiring cycle is going. I know basically most of the coordinators are all set in stone. So I think one big takeaway is Todd Monken staying at Georgia. And I know one thing people are going to ask about is Arch Manning. I don't know if that's been touched up on, but I think when it comes to Arch, I even went back and watched the old interviews that we had with his head coach and that he did with other people, with some of our national guys when we've interviewed him. And he's talked a lot about, even with other schools, about the offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, and head coach. I don't think the offensive line coach, yes, they had a connection there because Matt knew Archie, Eli, and a lot of the family when he was the head coach at Ole Miss where they played. So that is one of the connections where, yes, he's known the Mannings for a few years now. So I understand that. So that definitely doesn't help that he leaves, but I don't think like this notion of, okay, Georgia went from 1 to 3 or something like that. That's way overblown because Buster Faulkner's as important as any other coach in this one. They like Buster Faulkner a lot. They like Todd Monken a lot, and then Kirby Smart. I remember him saying that Kirby Smart's a guy he can see himself play for as much as any other head coach. So that's a big thing because I think with a lot of these guys, it's who's the head coach. Because if you have guys like Sark or Kiffin who may look to leave, or could be like Sark's one season was losing season, that's something you look at and say, is that guy still going to be there? There's going to be at some point, I don't think now, going to be the questions about Saban's age. I think that's something that Kirby's going to use as a sales pitch about himself.
How old is Nick Saban now?
70. I believe he's 70 now. 70 or 71. But that's one where Arch Manning, it's not going to have as big of an impact as some people think, but it definitely doesn't help. I will say that on Arch. And then when it comes to the new O-line coach, this is going to be one of the most desirable O-line jobs, because now you look at Georgia and you say Georgia, Alabama, they probably would be the most desirable. And Texas, I think just because of the state and you're going to get big money, I would put them in there. That's why Alabama's O-line coach left to go to Texas with Sark, Kyle Flood, that you brought up, because he knew, well, Texas has got elite talent and I'm going to get a huge paycheck. So they're probably the 3 top O-line jobs you would want. And I look at Georgia and say, you walk in, you have that much talent. You have in-state guys that we're covering in 2024. There's a 2025 kid that I posted about yesterday who got his first offer from Georgia. This guy's 6'8", 330 pounds, freshman in high school. And these kids are being made in the state of Georgia. That's a huge selling point. I can just go in there. It's a lot easier to recruit, look at the program. So I think all the O-line coaches are going to want it. I think one of the guys I would have targeted if I was Kirby would have been the Kentucky O-line coach, but he got a job at Alabama. He to me would have been a clear front runner, but now that one looks like it's done. But I'm curious to see who ends up being the coach, because it's a really desirable job.
Well, I mean, you have to think about it this way too, Ben. Even if you're not looking at the guys moving forward in terms of recruiting, if you're just looking at this as, if you're an O-line coach looking at this as a 2-year stop, and then you move on to better things, become an OC or something like that, you can put on your resume that you helped put Broderick Jones in the league. You helped put Cedric Van Pran in the league. You helped put potentially Tate Ratledge, Amarius Mims. I mean, there's tons of guys that you can, if you're coming over, you can then take credit for those guys too, and put them on your resume and say, hey, look, I put, a bunch of guys in the league, even though you weren't the one that recruited them. I think Matt Luke has officially put out a statement. For everybody, I don't have access since this was started by, I think Dane started this stream. I can't get in here and put stuff on here. But let's see if I can find it though. And I can read it for you guys at least. So if you're listening to this later, I don't see it. Lucy Bowers put it in there that Luke has put his official statement out saying it's family time. Let me see if I can find it on the old Twitter real quick. Okay, here we go. All right. UGA has officially announced that Matt Luke is stepping down. Here's his statement. So I'll read it to you guys. This is from Matt Luke. So Matt Luke is speaking here. Today, after much prayer and conversation with my family, I have decided to step away from coaching and shift my focus to spending more time with my family, said Luke. I want to thank Coach Smart, his wife, Mary Beth, and the entire Georgia family for an incredible past 2 seasons. I also appreciate Coach Smart's support in my decision today. He's a great coach, and I'll always cherish his friendship. It has been an honor of a lifetime to be able to win a national championship with this staff and these players, and something I'll never forget. Being able to play and compete in the SEC as a player and then continue my career in football as a coach for the last 23 years has allowed me the opportunity to give back to the game I love so much. To all the players I have had the opportunity to coach throughout the years, I want to say thank you for trusting me and allowing me to be your coach and play a small role in your lives. I'll never forget the relationships and memories that we made together. And then he goes on to thank his family, and then goes on to thank Coach Smart again. Been coaching 23 years, Ben. His kids
he played at Ole Miss, right?
Yeah, I mean, his kids are, I think, one's in 3rd or 4th grade. I don't know how old the other ones are, but he's got, younger kids now, and maybe he wants to get back into their lives a little bit. Roddy, I don't know if you just jumped on, but I was reading Matt Luke's official word there saying he's going to have time with his family. He's been coaching 23 years. So,
yeah. Whoa.
that's a long time. I mean, it's a lot of money, you don't have to go.
I'm happy for him. I'm just saying, I've been doing this 29 years, how long has Kirby been coaching? How long time Monken been coaching? But the point is,
how many buyouts have you gotten?
Yeah, exactly. I would say
you get fired or you get millions of dollars.
So he can, and I'm thinking, man, if I could have retired 4 years ago to spend, well, for me, he's got kids younger than mine. But if I could have retired 4 years ago, I would have been able to go to every wrestling meet, track meet, football game, everything that my son Ollie did. Every one of them. Hell, I'd go to his 4-H things. Whatever he did, I'd be able to go to it. And I would have loved to have done that, So, I mean, I'm very happy for him. I had to take a call there. There was actually someone explaining to me what was about to come out in the official release. We told people when we broke the news that the release would be coming soon, and that person was telling me what was likely going to be in it, and sure enough, there it was. So you guys are seeing how news is gathered in real time. And, again, shout out to Dash for having the news early this morning and sitting on it for 6 hours or longer to wait until the players were notified. So
I think it's going to be interesting, Roddy, moving forward now that Georgia's on its third O-line coach in the last 3 years. And with you saying 21 offensive linemen now on Georgia's roster once everybody gets here into Athens, what the portal is going to look like, because it's going to be a new coach. They're going to have to kind of re-recruit these kids all over again. That's what I think fans should shift to. Obviously you want to know who the next coach is, but the retention of big time guys is going to be critical here. And I'm just kind of wondering your take on that. I know that there's going to be some attrition. You can't keep 21 guys, I don't think, on your offensive line. That's a four deep. So I think there's going to be some guys, but how does that play into the factor of the next head coach, or no, the next offensive line coach?
I would look at that middle range. Okay, your upperclassmen, you often see an upperclassman who hasn't played a whole lot transfer.
Mm-hmm.
So I know in Condon or a guy like that who's been around a while, maybe they do. I'm not saying he will. I'm saying it's guys who've had a start or two, but hasn't quite panned out for it. You see those guys transfer, but your guys who are going to be your starters, they're like, "Hey, coach, I'm your starting right tackle. I'm not going anywhere. I've already made it." Your freshmen haven't really gone through the ringer yet. To them, this will be their first coach. What about your sophomore 4-star or 5-star? What about your junior 4-star or 5-star? Kind of the guys in the middle who aren't starters yet, who let's think that, well, hell, I've already been here 2 years and I haven't broke the starting lineup yet. There's a new coach, I'll give him a shot in spring, see what I think, and if we have a good exit meeting after spring, then I'll stick with him. If not, this ain't working for me. And they hit the portal, So to me, it's that mid-range when it comes to years and mid-range when it comes to how much playing time they've seen,
I think also with that too, for those guys that are kind of middle tier, like you were talking about, Roddy, maybe they were middle tier or lower tier for Matt Luke. New offensive line coach comes in, really likes the way, this guy moves his feet in pass protection. He gets bumped up a little bit. There might be a good guy that gets bumped down. So, you might see a different name or two in the transfer portal than what we originally had thought would be the guys under Luke, because now you have a whole new set of eyes, a whole new thing that this offensive line coach might like or might want to see. He might want to see a little bit more athleticism instead of being 330 pounds.
You're right. That's a great point. And Ben can back this up. When you've seen – when it went from Will Friend to Rob Sale to whoever, it seems like every guy is philosophically opposed to what the last guy did.
Yes.
I want 360 pounders across the board, mountains of men. The next guy comes in and goes, I want everybody 295 and can run,
Yep.
Then the next iteration, I need 350 guys who, eat chain links for breakfast. It's like, okay, there seems to be two kind of warring philosophies there. Or I remember when, and I've even seen Nick Saban's have the same thing where they would go out and we're going to go get the best guard, and they go after a guy who's just, thick-necked guard who can't play tackle, can't play center. And that's the best offensive guard in the nation. They recruit him to be a guard. Whereas later on, they're like, this is the best offensive lineman. He can play, all 5 positions. He could be a center. He could be a guard. He could be a tackle. And it seems that Georgia's been recruiting a lot of those guys. How many of the last let's say the last 13, 14 Georgia signees on the offensive line can play multiple positions? You talk about Ernest Green, Drew Bobo, Scruggs. Hey, he can be a guard. He played tackle. He could be a center. But again, that's that warring philosophy where I'm going to go get a tackle. I'm going to go get a center. I'm going to go get a guard, or I'm just going to get a lineman. And all of those are good philosophies, but you make a great point there, Paul, when all of a sudden the new guy comes in and maybe his philosophy doesn't match what a kid's wants, and the kid's like, I'm going to go try it somewhere else. And remember, they have a lot of people that they meet when they're being recruited. Kirby Smart's created this, So it's like, hey, UNC was on me hard. Clemson was on me hard. Texas wanted me really bad. Texas A&M wanted me really bad. You reach out to that coach, you put your name in the portal, you reach out to them, and all of a sudden, they're falling all over themselves to get you to come play for them. So, again, and here's the thing. There has to be some attrition. You're 91 scholarships.
Yeah, with 21 of them being on the offensive line. So, I mean,
But if you're doing that's first string, second string, third string, and fourth string.
And then you got one guy that's on the fifth string.
You know what I noticed, though? Offensive line's been one of the positions that there hasn't been much attrition at by the portal at Georgia. Like defensive back, it's like half those guys feel like they leave every year. It's like, it's a whole new room. It's a whole new coach. It's like –
I think it's still coming, though. Like, I think that's one of those that after spring ball, you might see a couple guys be like, all right, I'm still in this spot, or I didn't jump as much as I wanted. I think there could still be some attrition on the way.
Because
that's what I was just saying. That's what I was just saying, Dane.
More guys leaving, and I think it's right now, and I think I brought this up to Roddy earlier when Roddy posted earlier about potentially guys leaving. Well, you have to enroll because right now it's new semester of college right now. There's no point. You enter the portal now. It's not like you're going to enroll and play with that team right away. You can't till the summer. So I think a lot of the guys are going to wait anyway and say, you know what? I'm going to see if I move up the depth chart in the spring, and then I can just enroll in the summer at a new school. Things don't go well. I think that's the new approach to the O-lineman at this point.
I mean, and we're not talking about guys that couldn't start on 75% of other O-lines throughout the country. Georgia's stacked with 4 or 5 star, really high 3 stars throughout that whole 21 guys that we just named. 18 of them could go play for 75% of the programs in Division I Power 5. So, it's tough, but at the same time, Dane, what I was talking about before you came on was I think the philosophy of the O-line coach, if he wants a big guy, does he want fast guys? And what Roddy was talking about was saying every year or every time an O-line coach changes, it seems like the next one wants the exact opposite. So I'm curious to see, and we'll figure it out once the new O-line coach is announced and who it is, if his philosophy is the same as it's been at Georgia, get those, kind of big guys, road graders. Matt Luke's philosophy was a little different even than Sam Pittman's, though. He wanted, guys that were almost positionless in a sense, whereas Pittman went for the biggest guy on the board regardless and just was going to turn him into whatever.
I mean, surely Todd Monken has a lot to say about that, though, right? If I want the offensive line to play this way for my quarterback and do this, and maybe, for this upcoming season, Stetson Bennett starting quarterback for the whole year and you plan for it. He's not a drop back passer. Let's get him on the move. I need to have an offensive line that can pull and move and do things a little bit differently. Georgia can't just run straight forward like you would with a drop back passer, or Stetson just has to do things differently on the front. And surely Todd Monken realizes that. Yeah,
and I think he did a good job of it last year. But it's just, I'm curious to see who they'll bring in to, if it's a totally different, like a Sam Pittman-like guy, where it's like, let me get the 370-pound guys and bring them in, or it's going to be, oh goodness, was it Rob Sale or Will Friend who wanted like 280-pound guys?
I don't remember who, but you're right. It was one of those guys.
It was one of the two, and it just was
guys complete. That could run,
Yeah. So that's what I'm looking forward to the most, to seeing what type of O-lineman Georgia will be bringing in this next class, because with offensive line, it's not like defensive backs like Ben was saying, where every defensive back, if they're good, it doesn't matter how big they are or whatever, you want them. But O-line is a distinct position where it's like, he's 40 pounds too heavy. I don't really want him too much, or he's 40 pounds too light. It's different.
Well, I worked with a photographer. I worked with a photographer one time at my first job at WALB in Albany, Georgia, and he was an alumnus of the University of Georgia. And at the time, this was around like 2011, 2012, he was so mad because he'd be like, Alabama's out there getting DJ Fluker, and you know what Georgia's doing? Zach DeBell.
Oh, boy.
And that is not hating on Zach DeBell, although
I love
he
Zach.
was.
Zach's one of my favorite of all time.
He was hating on him in that way.
No, yeah.
I mean, what he was saying was like, Alabama's getting these big old dudes and Georgia's going to Marist and seeing what they got. And that was just, it was stereotype, but Georgia changed that. And Mark Richt was in the process of changing it, and then Kirby swung that door wide open.
No, you're right. There was a time when, they're getting like an Alex Leatherwood and you were getting a Brandon Cablano, and Brandon started for years, but at a certain point there comes a girth issue, a mass issue. It's not like you had Max Gillis out there, over the years.
Talk about girth.
You go thin with Inman, or Roland, guys like that. I mean, hell, Nick Jones was a beefy boy out there. So there are two really different philosophies. But I can see why you need to go a little bit thinner when you have the complicated offense that Todd Monken runs. It's and you have guys that have to peel off and get downfield.
That's why you just find Andrew Thomas, who can do everything. He's one of the best ever. Because those are there every year.
But then, hey, you bring in Robert Jones and Amarius Mims. I mean, that's how you want to build offensive tackles. They are the prototypes. You build a mold around those guys, and then see if everybody else will fit in that mold. But again, that is a rare body type, rarefied air.
Yeah, I was going to say, they offered a kid who was a freshman. I was telling Paul, who as an 8th grader was 6'8", 325 pounds. It's an offensive lineman. I saw this. I was like, this has to be fake. And it's not. I'm like, this kid, Nick Brooks. I'm like,
his birth certificate's like what was that movie where it's just he opens it up. He's like, I am 12. Yeah. And it shows the picture of like a grown man on it. There's no way. 6'8", 325 in 8th grade.
Yeah, you look back, there's some of the guys in this 2023 class. There's not. I mean, Miles McVay's not that.
That stuff happens though, because Herman Johnson, I don't know if you all remember him. He played at LSU. When did he play at LSU? Like 2013? No, he was before that. So he was like 2009 draft. He was the biggest baby in the history of Louisiana. I'm pulling this up now. 15 pounds, 14 ounces.
His poor mother.
And the doctor told his mother, this was from the news story at the time.
What was left of her?
Yeah, he told her that he would be a future LSU Tiger, which, I mean, that was a pretty safe bet at the time.
That was, but
I'm
wondering,
right?
He would be one in 4 years.
Paul, did you ask if that's a C-section?
Yeah, that was a C-section, right?
That's a double C-section.
But I guess what I'm saying, Ben,
is
it's possible for those people to exist in 8th grade, but that's insane because I would have been like, I need to see a picture to confirm these measurements because I don't believe you.
Hey, look at Ben Cleveland.
Yeah,
Ben Cleveland is the one. Yeah.
Dabo Swinney went to see him play baseball as an 8th grader. He was at a base because he loved baseball, and he would be playing first base. And you'd see people like they go up to the first base sides and they'd try to take a picture of him, like discreetly. And Ben would turn to him like, just take the damn photo. He didn't say damn, but just take the picture. Quit trying to hide it, take it. And so they were in South Carolina for like a 2 or 3 day tournament. Somebody saw him and called Dabo Swinney and said, look, Dabo, I'm at this crazy baseball tournament. There's a first baseman here. This kid's in 8th grade. You need to come see him. Dabo dropped what he was doing and went to a baseball tournament to put eyes on Ben Cleveland as an 8th grader. That's how big Ben was at that time. But again, you can go for those guys, and they don't always work out. But hey, shout out to Ben for being in the league now.
And he could do the pulling guard thing too. So he had good enough and quick enough feet to get out there. Yeah. Size is not always a deterrent for that.
Hey guys, I'm gonna have to step out. Y'all enjoy the show. Thanks for talking with me.
We're probably just gonna end the whole thing, I think.
Yeah,
right?
That's fine.
All right. What a ceremonious ending. Roddy's going to leave and go to the beach.
Dude, I've been sitting in this chair since 8 o'clock this morning working this story. And I can't feel dude, I've had this thing of margaritas ready to go to the beach for hours, and all the ice melted out of it. It's I thought we were going to break the story a lot earlier. Then we found out that, hey, can you wait until the players find out? Like, yeah, okay, yes, we can. So we did. But the point being, I actually have some stuff I have to do before my aunt gets here. I got to take care of this place, so I got to step away.
All right. That's our reaction to Matt Luke being out at Georgia. If you are watching us, make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. We'll keep pumping content on here heading into spring ball, and then as we get closer to the season for 2022. For Roddy, Ben, and Paul, I'm Dane. Thanks for watching.